been working on this for ages.
Yeah. So it's going to be. Welcome, councillors, members of the public and staff. I declare the meeting open at 6:32 p.m. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner. Keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Do not use any defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation laws apply to addresses in public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice and Meeting Etiquette. I remind all present that the video recording is an official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. So we'll begin with an acknowledgement of country. Bayside Council acknowledges the traditional custodians, the Gadigal and Bidjigal people of the Eora Nation, and pays respect to elders past, present and emerging. The people of the Eora Nation, their spirits and ancestors will always remain with our waterways and the land, our Mother Earth. So apologies and attendance by audio-visual link. We have received an apology from Councillor Bill Saravanowski. Are there any further apologies or councillors seeking a leave of absence? Okay. Yep, they're on. Are there any, do I have a mover and a seconder?
Second.
Moved by Councillor Barlow, seconded by Councillor Curry. All those in favour? Aye. We move to a procedural motion. As we have Councillor Muscat and Councillor Werner wishing to participate in this meeting by audio-visual link, may I have a motion? May I have? Would someone like to move and second that the councillor request to? Moved, seconded by Councillor Douglas. All those in favour? Aye. I declare this carried. Do any councillors wish to make any disclosure of interest? No disclosures of interest. Minutes of the previous meeting. Can I ask two councillors who are present at the meeting to move and second the confirmation of the minutes? Moved by Councillor Barlow.
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Curry. All those in favour? Carried. We will not. There are 5 items on the agenda for tonight's meeting, so we'll move to the next item. As there are no public speakers registered for the forum tonight, we'll move straight to the report. So the first report on the agenda is CPE 22.027, Post-Exhibition Draft Dog Off-Leash Policy. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Curry. Can I ask the officer to give us a quick update on this report?
On public exhibition. The policy doesn't determine actual areas for dog off leash. It does guide responsibilities and procedures of council and confirms off leash areas in attendance on.
Okay. The policy does provide roles, responsibilities and procedures identification. During the public exhibition period, we had 104 respondees. 84% of them supported the policy, 16% did not. We had 56 comments, some of which commented on owner behaviour, regardless, and their concerns were that regardless of a policy, some owners choose to ignore off-leash areas, they fail to clean up, and they don't create a safe place for other dog owners or non-dog owners. The recommendation of the staff is that the policy not be amended, and that it be adopted by council.
Thank you. It was quite a good policy, draft policy. I suggest that it would be great to have kind of a little summary with infographics in there on the respondees. Do any councillors have any questions regarding the draft policy? Councillor Douglas?
So point 2.1.5 prohibited areas, no dog access mentions wildlife protected areas. I have been following up from a residents' inquiry about the landing lights wetlands to get adequate signage there, because there is a lot of off-leash dogs that go through there, and it is an important bird life area. I haven't managed to get that signage put in place, and I know it's an ongoing issue for that area. So I'm just wondering, how does that fit with, we've got these prohibited areas, it says that we won't have dogs in wildlife protected areas, but what are we actually going to be doing then to actually police that?
Through you, in areas where dogs should be on lead, council can enforce that. Dog off-leash areas are only those identified in Appendix 1. Certainly areas where wildlife and biodiversity is a priority, we would be looking at potentially putting in better measures to make sure that those areas are protected. I know that in relation to the landing lights signage, one of the issues was around funding availability for that signage. We do, routinely put in signage that says all dogs should be on leash. So I know the instance you're talking about.
Yeah, I just think if we are going to have policies, it's important that the people on the ground actually are aware of what those restrictions need to be in that area. So it needs to be it needs to be on the ground. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. So is there a community education plan that's rolled out with this policy when it gets adopted?
It's certainly something that we can implement. We can do that via Facebook, council's webpage, the newsletter.
I think that would kind of serve as a reminder to the community that there will be a new adopted policy, and that there are certain areas. Can we add? Are we able to add that as a? Okay, can I add that to the? Did you capture that wording? That council rolls out a community engagement plan or education plan with the adopted policy. Do you accept that amendment, Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, I just wondered whether it would be worth also adding in there that in terms of wildlife protected areas that we actually have adequate signage, and we aim to have adequate signage as well.
So you can word that is look for funding to provide adequate signage for places such as
Wildlife protected areas.
correct. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions, councillors? So there is would you like any right of reply, Councillor Douglas? So there is an officer recommendation before us. All those in favour? Aye. All those against? I declare the recommendation carried.
Just check if online
Oh,
have any questions.
sorry, online councillors, did you have any questions?
No, thank you.
I'm fine, thank you.
Okay,
Thanks.
I'll remember to ask for the next one. We move on to report number CPE 22.028, submission on draft New South Wales coastal design guidelines. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Douglas, seconded by Councillor Barlow. Firstly, before we get the officer to speak to the report, I'd like to say that it was quite a detailed submission. It looked like a lot of time has gone into this submission, so I thank the officer who wrote this detailed submission. But can we ask that you give us a brief summary of this report?
Thank you, through the chair. The New South Wales coastal design guidelines have been on exhibition. They are part of a framework for managing coastal areas and including areas that we have in Bayside. We have quite a few different types of coastal areas. These guidelines apply where someone might be seeking a change to local environmental plan via a planning proposal. The submission did identify that we'd like to see some further refinements and clarifications about how the requirements of the guidelines can actually be met, and some mapping. This is a step forward. These guidelines are a step forward for the state government, and they come about and they implement certain aspects of 3 acts and a state environmental plan for resilience and hazards. They promote place-based approach to landform, blue systems, green systems, built environment, and one example is that they seek to protect solar access to beaches before 4 p.m. in midwinter. So it does provide more guidance to councils in assessing planning proposals. And the Office's recommendation is that we support the submission.
Thank you. Do any councillors have any questions?
So can I just ask, so is this just considered alongside the LEP and DCP, or is it embedded?
So they provide greater guidance on how to assess a planning proposal and also guidance on urban design in coastal areas. So ministerial directions give council direction on how we assess a planning proposal, and there is ministerial direction in relation to coastal zones, and these guidelines provide additional information for applicants and councils about how we go about designing in the coastal environment and how we assess rezonings.
Thank you. Councillors online, are there any questions?
No, thank you.
I guess I was just wondering if this is only for planning proposals or if it can affect other things like DAs, or if it affects existing residences.
Through the Chair, my understanding is that this is purely for planning proposals. It does give guidance on urban design matters related to development that could be in a coastal zone, but they are considerations at the early stage of any proposal, which is the rezoning stage. So it's not at the DA stage.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, there is an officer recommendation before us. All those in favour? All those against? I declare the recommendation carried. We had a bit of interference there. Sorry for those in the audience. So we move on to the next agenda item, which is CPE 22.029, Draft Planning Agreement 215 to 235 O'Riordan and 1 to 3 Ewan Street. Mascot, do I have a mover and a seconder for the report? Moved by Councillor Barlow, seconded by Councillor Douglas. Can I ask the officer to come up and provide a brief summary of this item?
Yes, certainly, Chair. Councillors might remember that at your last council meeting you dealt with a planning proposal for the same site in O'Riordan Street. And this planning agreement was referred to in that matter, although it's separate, it's linked. What's before you tonight is an offer from the applicant alongside that planning proposal to enter into a planning agreement. The offer in the agreement is $12 million for council to put towards pretty much anything in the area that it thinks would be of benefit to the community. So that could be open space embellishment, community facilities, purchasing land, fairly much any purpose that council sees fit. The agreement at this stage, council actually looked at an offer back in October last year. The agreement's now sort of been drafted and is ready to go on public exhibition. So that's the point in the process. So tonight the recommendation is that council support the draft planning agreement to go on public exhibition for 28 days. And then delegate to the General Manager to finalise it, taking into account any submissions that are made. If the agreement goes through, The money would be payable before the first building on the site is occupied. That's probably a couple of years away. They've only just had their planning proposal signed off by council, and that's yet to go through the Department of Planning process. Then they would need to lodge a development application, have that approved, and then undertake the construction. So it's some time away, but this just puts that in place for that when that time comes around.
Thank you. Just for my benefit, is there anything that determines the timing of the payment? I know you just said that it was prior to the first occupation, but is there a kind of a regulation that determines that timing?
So the timing would be built into the agreement, which is binding on both the council and the proponent. And so the way that it's worded is that they can't obtain an occupation certificate until there's acknowledgement by council in writing that the payment has been received. So the certifier at that point in time who would be issuing the occupation certificate wouldn't be able to do that until they had written verification from council.
Thank you. So could the payment be received sooner?
It could. The agreement only specifies the time by which it must be received. It's probably unlikely that the applicant would offer to pay it sooner, but it's not ruled out.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any further questions?
So just to clarify, so the agreement and is specifically for council to determine at its discretion where the money's spent with no, does council then have to go back and sort of seek, I guess, approval for the type of projects, or is it purely at our at council's discretion?
Through you, Chair. The agreement says that the money in the first instance should be spent in the Mascot area, and that's really just to recognise that it should benefit people that are associated with the development. There is provision in there, though, to say that council can, at its discretion, spend it on pretty much anything it wants, and there's no need to confirm that back with the proponent. When we enter into these agreements, or when we have them drafted, we make it a point to be sure that there is maximum flexibility in there, and in this case, it's pretty much open to council to do whatever it wants with the money.
Thank you. I believe Councillor Morrissey has a question.
Thank you. Thank you. I can see that the amount is indexed, which is great, and that's indexed from, is it right that the amount is indexed from the date of this agreement being executed?
Yeah, that's correct. Yep.
Okay. And in addition to the VPA, you've also got the standard regulatory developer contribution. What triggers that? Is that DA conditions?
Yes, that's correct. So it depends on the final makeup of the development. This one is in a business zone, but it could comprise various things. So I think we've estimated an amount there of about 8.75 million. Okay. That could alter. So that would be determined at the time when there's a development application lodged and approved. The conditions for those, there is some change possible. For the time being, there's a ministerial direction that allows them to be paid at occupation as well. But there's some talk that might change back to construction certificate, which is the way it used to be. So there's some reforms being discussed at state government level at the moment.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to just get an update on a future report if it is a construction certificate or occupation certificate, because as you know, there can be a huge gap between those. Also in the detail there, there's a timeline around a release if the change is not gazetted within 18 months. And what's the expected period of time for this to be gazetted?
Through you, Chair. So the planning proposal is at its final stage now. It went through council at its last meeting. That's now with the Department of Planning for their final sign-off. So can't commit the department, but that would generally we'd expect that within a couple of months.
Okay, so there's no risk really. There's minimal to
that
the 18 months would be under jeopardy.
No,
okay.
I wouldn't see a reason for that.
And there's also reference to a bank guarantee within 90 days. So is that 90 days after gazettal?
I'd have to check the terms of the agreement. I'm not 100% sure. on that.
I suppose what I'm getting at, sorry for more context, is that after that time, there has to be a bank guarantee. Is that bank guarantee for the VPA? What is that bank guarantee for?
Yes, the bank guarantee would be for the VPA monies, just to ensure, pardon me, that when it gets to occupation stage, the developer hasn't run out of money, I guess. So there's some certainty that once the building's finished, the funds are available to council.
That's what I'm
Yep.
just seeking confirmation. So, so the sequence is gazettal within probably this year, but no later than 18 months. Within 90 days after that, the proponent has to give council a bank guarantee for 12 million. That then is held until occupation certificate is granted, and we effectively then receive the 12 million or keep the bank guarantee at that point.
Yep.
And if there's any changes to that, we have got that, as you say, that bank guarantee. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. Do I have any questions from councillors online?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Any further questions, councillors? Okay, so we have a committee officer recommendation before us. We'll need to call a division on this one as it's a planning matter. So I'll go around the room when the there it is. So councillor, I'll just go with what I can see because I can't see that. Councillor Werner,
Agree.
Councillor Muscat,
Agree.
Councillor Curry, Councillor Barlow, Councillor Douglas, and I'm for as well. So that committee officer recommendation is carried. Now we move on to CPE 22.030.
I'm sorry, I think I might need to declare a significant conflict of interest here because I live close to Button Park, that I will have to actually leave the meeting.
Yep, okay. So next item is the post-exhibition S94A Rockdale Contribution Plan Amendment to include Barton Park. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Curry, seconded by Councillor Barlow. Can I ask for a summary of this report?
Yes, Chair. This is an amendment to the Rockdale Developer Contributions Plan to include the Barton Park upgrade project. It previously wasn't in the plan, probably due to the age of the plan, and it is an appropriate funding source given that it's in the catchment of Barton Park. So this amendment has been through council and out to public exhibition, and it's come back now for final approval. That's the recommendation. There were actually no submissions during the exhibition period. There was interaction, you can see in the attachment there on the website. So I think around 80 people viewed the material and some downloaded some of the documents as well, but there were actually no submissions made. So the recommendation is that it be adopted so that the plan can make funding available to Barton Park.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I've got a question through the chair. So does this mean that contributions that are made surrounding Barton Park can be spent on Barton Park, or does this mean that the businesses at Barton Park also make contributions?
Through your chair, the contributions would come from the former Rockdale LGA Developer Contributions Plan, so they're collected across the former Rockdale local government area from all different types of development. So yeah, they're not targeted at any particular contributors, if you like.
Thank you.
So if there are no further questions, we'll move to the officer recommendation for us. We'll need to call a division due to this being a planning matter, so I'll go around the room again. So Councillor Werner.
For?
Councillor Muscat.
For.
Councillor Curry. Councillor Barlow. And I'm for, so I declare the item carried. Now we're moving to... Oh, sorry. Just get Councillor Douglas back in the room before we move to item CPE 22.031, which is the Cooks Cove Draft Planning Proposal Gateway Determination and Public Benefit Offer. Do I have a mover and seconder for this? Moved by Councillor Barlow, seconded by Councillor Curry. Can I once again receive a summary on this report?
Yes, Chair. This report is brought to Council in the Committee for Information, essentially. It refers to land that's known as Cooks Cove. It's primarily the former, or the current Cogra Golf Course. This proposal has been around in various forms, I think, for a couple of decades now. So this is the latest iteration of it. The stage that it's at now is that Council declared a conflict of interest in dealing with it due to Council being the trustee for some land that's involved. So the matter has been dealt with by the Department of Planning, with the Regional Planning Panel being the advisory authority to them. So the stage that it's at now is the planning proposal has been given the okay to go on exhibition, which will be run by the Department of Planning. The proposal itself is to rezone the land primarily to accommodate logistics type uses and some sort of high-tech industrial. There's a small amount of retail, some visitor accommodation and some office as well. 342,000 square metres of floor space altogether, so it's quite a considerable development. The proponent has quite a lot of work to do to get to exhibition. They have until April next year to get all of that work done. The requirements that they have to satisfy are attached to the report. There's traffic modelling, a whole lot of consultation and further assessment to be done. And from there, after exhibition, the submissions will be considered back through the Department of Planning and the Regional Planning Panel for a final decision. The other component of this is public benefit. So the planning panel asked the proponent to put forward a package of things that they could offer as a public benefit alongside their planning proposal. There's a list in the report here. It's fairly preliminary. We weren't really in a position to negotiate things in great detail at this point in the process, particularly with Council still having a conflict as a trustee over some of the land. There's a dot point list you can see in the report there. Some of them are things that are necessary to enable the development, including roadworks and new intersections. Some of the things that would be of great benefit to the community, in our view, include a bridge over the Cooks River to the International Airport for cyclists and pedestrians, a pedestrian bridge over Princes Highway to Wallow Creek from Cahill Reserve, and the intention of that is to get better connectivity from this site to the railway station in Wallow Creek. There is proposal to create a foreshore cycleway and pedestrian path along the entire frontage of the site along the Cooks River, which the proponent would embellish and then retain the maintenance liability over with full public access. There's also discussion about continuing that cycleway down and across, building a bridge across Muddy Creek to connect up to the rest of the cycleway. There's some land to be dedicated to Council elsewhere for open space, and also an offer of some improvement, some funds towards improving our adjacent land off Marsh Street that's currently occupied partly by the M6 construction compound. So there's some of the public benefits on offer. They will be further fleshed out and negotiated as part of the process, but the panel was keen to make sure that there was something captured at this point in the process so the community could see when it goes on exhibition what the total proposition actually is. I'll probably leave it at that. If there's any detailed questions, I can answer them.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Councillor Douglas?
Yeah, I have a few through the chair. So I noted the significant public benefit contributions that could be made with this development, which is great. But I did want to ask a couple of questions. This area that's in trust with the council, where does that actually, which areas are they talking about developing that are in trust with the council? If we're looking at map 1, does that indicate that? Which is on page 240, the last page.
The one, so page numbers are different here.
It's on that map.
Okay.
This site map.
Yep.
It's the red.
Okay, yep.
And it's the
So if it's Figure 2 site map, is that the one you're looking at?
No, mine's map 1. It's the, yes, legend with Cooks River in the purple.
Okay,
Public benefit offer overview diagram.
okay, right, I'm with you. Just make sure we're talking about the same one. Yep. Last page of this one. Yeah. So the land in question is, there's a long sort of slightly arrow-shaped section along Marsh Street itself that's known as Lot 14. That is part of the land owned by council. So it runs sort of parallel to Marsh Street and tapers off towards the Cooks River. And then there's a larger section that juts partly into the proponent's land, known as Lot 1. So all of that land is currently owned by council, but was given to council in trust from Transport for New South Wales. And so council's obligation as the trust manager is to make that land available if it's required for county road. And part of the M6 operations centre will be on that land permanently, and otherwise to hold the land for the purpose of recreation. So the conflict for council arises because the Cooks Cove proposal wants to build roads across that land to access their site that are not county roads. And so that's in conflict with the trust, and that's why council is somewhat council's obliged to defend. So the solution the state government has for that is that they will reclassify that land from community land to operational land under the Local Government Act, and then ask the Governor-General to dissolve the trust. So it's quite a complicated process, but through that the trust would be removed and council's conflict would also be removed through that process.
So on this map, which has got alphabetical, it's through the chair, there's a big green area called I. What is that part of the trust land currently, and what's the plan for that?
Let me just find that map. Okay, yeah, so the same map now. So the brighter green section you're referring to? Yeah, that's the land owned by council. There is a finger of land that's in a lighter coloured green that goes from the darker shade down to the Cooks River, right at the bottom there. That's land that's proposed to be dedicated by the proponent to council to make a connection down to what would become the foreshore cycleway and pedestrian path. But the rest of the land in the brighter green colour is already owned by council, and that's affected by the trust.
And so if we lost our trust status through the chair, what happens to that land then?
Yeah, council would still own it, and it would just, the proposal here is to zone it for public recreation, so it will stay as recreation. So the M6 motorway, I think you can see on an earlier aerial photo, occupies a section in the middle of that land. And once that work is, the M6 is completed, stage 1, they will hand that land back to council, embellished in some form. And so the Cooks Cove planning proposal has offered to fund the embellishment of the land around where the M6 compound is located, so that the whole lot can be brought up to a better standard.
I wanted to ask another question just around, these are quite massive industrial warehouses. Has there been any assessment for the need for those buildings as part of this proposal? Because we do have the Aerotropolis moving to the west, so I just question why this proposal?
Yes, there has been, and the proponent, I guess, wouldn't be looking to do this type of development if it wasn't a product that they could sell. We've actually had quite a bit of interest on the other side of the airport as well from a landholder there for this type of development, so the market is showing interest in it. It'll be multi-storey warehousing for freight, and it could also service some port activity as well as the airport.
Thank you. Just on the recommendation, I note that the recommendation is for noting, so it appears that all we can do at this stage is just note. But Councillor Morrissey, do you have any questions?
No, I was just standing up here. Wanted to stretch. No, thank you, Chair. Just a couple of things, because I know you're probably not give insights, but this was a completely different proposal 2 years ago, where there was significant residential, a lot of hype and positivity about increasing population, and that's where all these things came about. So is there been, and it could build on Councillor Douglas's comment that this was almost a passion project for the proponent, and now that I didn't know until this report came out that it appears to be all but abandoned, and we're going to put warehousing on it. So is there any insights you can provide to the committee on what's occurred?
Yep, through your chair. There's a few reasons behind that change, and you're right, it was primarily residential. Several thousand apartments were proposed there. The land is currently zoned for non-residential purposes, so to support industry. The state government has a very strong directive to retain employment generating and economic activity generating land. And so turning this to residential was contrary to that, so that's one reason. The land is obviously in very close proximity to the airport, and the regional planning panel took a strong view in the end that it was kind of an opportunity that might be missed if it was to go to residential, which could go, almost anywhere. But land close to the airport is in limited supply, and there was seen to be a greater economic advantage from having uses there that would support the operation of the airport in particular. Probably the third most important reason is that it is very close to the flight path, and the airport itself was not terribly happy about having residential neighbours across the Cooks River. So there were some constraints around it in terms of residential amenity, particularly to do with aircraft noise. So they're the main reasons for the shift.
Okay, thank you. And
Yeah.
Can I just briefly interrupt? Councillor Bill Saravinovsky has just joined the meeting, so we'll need to run through a procedural motion to allow him to join the meeting. So do I have a mover? Move Councillor Curry, seconded Councillor Douglas. All those in favour? Aye. So, sorry, Councillor Morrissey.
that's right, thank you. Welcome, Councillor Sarafinovsky.
I haven't opened up my bags yet.
Okay. What's inside? With the public benefit offer, from memory, and again, I haven't got. There's no information on past reports here, but it seems like a bit of a laundry list of everything that'll make that'll work. That we're delivering all this stuff, and we'll throw this and throw this and throw this. But is there any? I suppose, again, maybe because it's just for noting only, we have to consider, are all of these things actually vital? Because some of them, to your point, the bridge over the river and the Princess Highway may be, but there could be other things there that really add no benefit, like it's a thing on a list, a piece of infrastructure on a list that's actually potentially in the long term going to cause council more pain in its maintenance than actually delivering a benefit for the community. Is there any estimated present value of what that bundle looks like? Or
Yeah, through your chair, the proponent did attempt to quantify it to some extent. The difficulty is that some of the works on that list are actually really required to enable the development to proceed. And so
Exactly.
from our view, they didn't really constitute a public benefit. Although the public could use those roads and so on, they weren't really something that the community would really want as a priority. So the value from that point of view wasn't particularly helpful. This will end up in some form of a planning agreement like the one that we've just considered. So there's definitely an opportunity there for council to have input into what the final list of things might be, and to put them in some sort of priority order. So that opportunity will definitely come. The other challenge at this point in the process is that this is the sort of an early stage for the development, and the proponent has no guarantee in terms of what they might end up with out of it. So they were also not willing to commit to providing everything or to fund everything completely, because in the end it's a proposition that they'll have to be comfortable with as an offer to council ultimately, and that will firm up as the process goes along.
yeah, and that was part. That was sort of what I was alluding to. That providing a road inside your own development doesn't benefit Bayside. They have to build the road. So that shouldn't be included as a bundle to say we're providing a $3 million road when the development would not, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, whatever it is, will not proceed without that road. So I don't think it's, I think it's a bit of a try-on to say, oh, we're giving you this road and we're giving you a footpath and we're giving you a bridge and we're giving you this, but without those pieces of infrastructure, the development wouldn't be able to proceed anyway. So I think as we're working through this process, we have to be very clear with the proponent to make sure that we're delivering for Bayside as an LGA and not just adding things in a bundle to say we're going to do all this and it's going to cost us millions of dollars, and that gets in a report somewhere where, you know, so what? You have to do it anyway. You have to put drainage in. You have to build a road. You have to put lights in. You have to someone has to pick up the rubbish. So let's just be very careful. I think we've raised this in past briefings with this. It's not, yeah, you can throw a whole heap of stuff out there, but unless it's a benefit to Bayside, for example, and this proponent wants to leave a legacy, why don't you connect east and west through the airport tunnel so people can ride their bikes over or under it or through it or something like that? That's something that benefits Bayside, not building a road in your own development and saying, well, there's $1 million out of my pocket. That's just it's just a try on, in my view. So that was it. Comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Morrissey. I think there's a few councillors who support those valid points there. I believe Councillor Curry had a question before we go to Councillor Souness.
So can I just clarify, there is still a desire to have community access along the river, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct, yep. Yeah, so at this point in time, it's a 20-metre wide corridor. It would have a pedestrian and cycle path through there with landscaping. All of the roads in the development and all the publicly accessible open space, we've asked that the developer retains ownership of, but we have easements over for public access. That way they have the maintenance obligation over the roads and the public open space. So,
good idea.
but they would effectively operate and look and feel like a public park.
Thank you.
Councillor Souness.
Thank you, Chair. This is the old tune playing again, isn't it, Councillor Barlow? We've heard it a few times, a few versions, a lot of versions. At one stage, the police helicopters were going to land there. At one stage, we're going to have the police horses. We're going to have a university there. We're going to have all sorts of things. Can I ask, does this also encompass the contaminated land, or are we avoiding the adjacent contaminated land in this case, in this proposal, in this version?
Through you, Chair, I'm not sure which land you're referring to. This is the Cogger Golf Course.
Yeah, next to the golf course, there's a piece of no man's land, as we used to call it, and it was being offered to council at $1, but it was going to cost an atrocious amount of money to remediate. Is that included in this proposal? No. Yes?
It includes all land that's owned by the Cogger Golf Club.
Okay, so that's not part of it. Okay, that's good. So are we giving council's consent for them to move forward?
Through you, Chair, no. The process is being run by the Department of Planning because of council's conflict of interest. So council doesn't have a role in saying yes or no.
Yeah, but surely if it's our land, we've got care and control, surely that question could be arisen earlier than later, because we might price him out of the market, price the developer out of the market. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, so the council land that's involved in it is the land along Marsh Street where the roads would come through. That's the only council land that's impacted by the planning proposal. Okay. Our open space is not.
Okay. In the previous iterations, it was going to be at one stage open space and sporting fields in a mix with Sydney Water and so on. The flood zone, it was a flood zone at that stage. Has that changed since we've seen it before?
Through your chair, no, the land is flood liable. The main flood risk is actually water coming through Cahill Park and then across Marsh Street during extreme flood events. So the proposal is to increase the height of the land by filling it and then directing the overland flow in a sort of more controlled way back to the Cooks River. Okay. So it is flood liable, but that's proposed to be managed.
Okay. And this is the same Department of Planning that didn't have an issue with the Housing Commission site on Forest Road in terms of height, yet they've got an issue with height in this particular instance. Is that correct?
Yes, there's one, only one Department of Planning.
It's the same Department of Planning. All right, look, if it's to do with bringing industrial and employment zone, look, I'd support that. Residential is a bit of an issue given the flood zone and allowing sporting events where I believe it was a metre high, people had to stand on the fence to see what was going on, given the flood constraints. We can't support. But it's an old thing. I don't know if the councillors were here before. The developer turned up, showed us pictures of bell frogs, how they were going to move them from one site to the other site, and they'll survive, and all these glossy photos. I'd love to see it, but the public benefit has to be real. It can't be, I'm building a road which is going to benefit me, but you can drive around if you like. Like, please. We've been down that path before. Okay? So I guess it's only for consultation,
Noting,
but it's got a lot of water to go under that bridge that's going to be built. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Souness. I think that the message of public benefit is loud and clear. Are there any councillors online that have any questions? Councillor Saravanovsky?
Through you to the director, I just want to clarify, who's actually going to be doing the LEP? Is it council or the department?
Through you, Chair, the Department of Planning is the planning authority for this one, not council.
Right, so we've got no role in the LEP.
Through you, Chair, the council's role in it is really as a stakeholder and an adjoining landowner. But it's because of the conflict of interest to do with the trust, which you may have missed the discussion on that, councillor.
Through you, Madam Chair, to Peter again. In relation to the letter from Amanda Harvey, it makes point about a public hearing. What's that?
Through you, Chair, a public hearing can be a part of the planning proposal process. It's optional. In this case, it is a condition that the Department of Planning have put on their approval for it to go to public exhibition, so that they will host that, and that will be held during the exhibition period.
All right, so in a nutshell, the government's going to drive into this, because I noticed in that same letter, they've made a determination that the local planning panel won't be considered. This will be their panel. Would that be correct, Peter?
Yeah, that's correct.
Right. So all we're doing tonight is just receiving the note.
Yes, that's correct. It was just brought to council for information.
Right, okay. No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Councillor Saravanovsky. Are there any further comments or questions?
Just a comment.
Yes, please.
I've been here from the beginning when it started off as a technology park, but it's the frogs. I presume that they will protect the frogs. The bell frogs, the golden bell frogs, because they're the most important thing on that land. And yes, now it keeps changing. It started off as a technology park and it's nearly gone back to that. So, and we don't have a say. I think we've just got to protect our interests, and hopefully the Department of Planning listen to us.
Yep. Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Councillor Werner?
Thank you. Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify something about the trust. So, and also reclassification from community to operational land. So, who would reclassify that? Would that be council, or did I hear you say before that that would be the Department of Planning that would reclassify that?
Through you, Chair, the reclassification process happens through a planning proposal. That's the mechanism. So as part of this planning proposal, it would be classified from community to operational. The department is contemplating classifying it back to community almost immediately because it is public open space, and that's the way that we would want to hold that land. It's just a mechanism to, along the way, to distinguishing the trust that they want to run through.
Okay, so it's out of our hands, but yeah, so is that just so that they can build a road on it, or is the road going to be built on the proponent's land?
Through your chair, yeah, it is to facilitate the road crossing through lot 14, which is council's land, into the development site. There's actually two roads.
Okay, and okay, thank you for that. The other question was on page 237. the proponent has said that they don't want to go into a value capture agreement and do the other sort of public benefits instead. But I'm just wondering if the value capture was a percentage or done at a certain rate, wouldn't could there be something that council might look at, like saying, okay, you don't know what your profit's going to be, but let's have a percentage of that?
Through you, Chair, the planning agreements are generally formulated as part of the planning proposal process, so that it really needs to be sort of quantified and signed up to at an earlier point in the process. The guidelines for planning agreements say that they shouldn't be used primarily as a value capture mechanism. There is a sort of a general direction against applying value capture strictly through some sort of a formula and the like. But yeah, the planning agreement is really probably the only mechanism that we really have to capture the public benefit.
Okay, is that something that council would consider pursuing, or has the proponent said they're not interested in it?
I think the planning agreement is really the only mechanism that we have to kind of capture a public benefit offer. And that will come back to council, as other planning agreements do, for council to consider before it's entered into. So at that point in time, you could consider how you would like to receive the public benefit, but a straight value capture mechanism by some kind of formula and the like is not something that I've seen put into a planning agreement in the past. It generally is either cash or some sort of works or land dedication.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think there's any further questions, so we'll need to call a division on this recommendation due to it being a planning matter. So I'll go around the room again. Councillor Werner.
Sorry, aren't we just noting this?
It's still a recommendation that we need to vote on.
Okay.
Yep. So are you for or against?
I guess I'll say for noting it.
Councillor Muscat?
For.
Councillor Curry? Councillor Barlow? Councillor Douglas? Councillor Saravinovsky?
For.
And I'm a for, so that one's carried, which brings us to the end of the meeting. So I declare the meeting closed at 7:24.
Welcome to councillors, members of the public and staff. I declare the meeting of the City Works and Assets Committee open at 7:29 p.m. Everyone at this meeting is reminded to conduct themselves in a polite and professional manner, keep communication factual, use appropriate language and tone. Obviously, don't use defamatory or derogatory remarks. Defamation law do apply to addresses in the public forum. I also ask councillors to observe the requirements under the Code of Meeting Practice of Meeting Etiquette. I remind all present that video recording is the official record of council and may be made available to persons upon request in accordance with the Government Information Public Access Act 2009. No other recordings are permitted. I'd like to begin by acknowledging country. Bayside Council acknowledges the traditional custodians of land, the Gadigal and Digital people of the Eora Nation, and pays respect to their elders past, present and emerging. Do we have any apologies? I don't think so. No apologies. Council is joined by audio visual link. Do we have any disclosed of interest?
Well, actually, I've been carrying a non-criminal, non-consensus interest doing anything around the street, so I will do that for the CWA 22024, the income result that I have a notice of any.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. Anyone else? Minutes of the previous meeting. I'm mover and seconder. Move Councillor Service, second Councillor Bardell. All those in favour, vote against. That is carried. I think we need to move items by exception. There are only 7 items on the agenda. I'd like to hear about the progress of those items in general. We'll move on to public forum. We have 2 speakers tonight in regards to CWA 22.027. I'd like to call Mr. Pedros dos Santos, an effective neighbour, speaking on the against the recommendation.
Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just like to communicate in regards to some parking that's some parking planning that's been proposed for the area that we live in. I'd like to reiterate that the communication has been very lacking. Furthermore, the issue that's happening is that the parking is happening basically on my side of the street. I live on the western side of Realm Street. So the nature strip's basically been indented into. My concern is that a lot of green space is going to be taken over. Management of the streets in regards to these projects happening, already without the street being, as mentioned on the letterheads, the street is being widened. Vehicles already travel at exorbitant speed through these streets. There's been no management in the last 20 years that we've been living in the area and paying rates. We've been ringing council to have some sort of traffic management in the street to avoid collisions from happening and people speeding down the street, making it very difficult for residents and children that live in the street. Nothing like this has happened in the past. Also, furthermore, we've for the last 15 years or so, we've been asking for a footpath to be constructed along the street. In many occasions, you see ladies pushing their children on prams in the middle of Realm Street. Cars coming down and up the road at great speeds. I think this is should be a matter of high concern. Due to there being no pathway on the nature strip. The parking really, as we see it, as I see it as a resident, isn't really needed for the area. It's not a high flow traffic area. I think the council would be probably more proactive in putting no standing or no parking signage along the western side of the street to avoid, as per stated on your letter, large vehicles and trucks parking and mounting along the curb on the nature strip, which is making it very difficult for cars or trucks such as garbage trucks travelling and collecting garbage. And noted on your letter this has been incidents that have happened in the past from cars being mounted, which mounted on the nature strip, which makes the street a lot narrower, difficult to travel through the street. So incidents and accidents have happened through these, through all these cars that are parking and mounting on the nature strip. So in my view, probably to save the council lots of funds, probably signage would be a more effective procedure than digging into all these nature strips and taking away the green spaces that we've got along our houses. Of course, in the past, over the last nearly 20 years that we've been living there, cars that park on the western side of the street, well, yeah, they're not really, there's a lot of noise that happens, radios being turned on in the middle of the night, rubbish being left over. Residents seem to have to sort of control the environment around there, and it's really not good. It's could be managed a little bit better, in my opinion. So that's where I stand on the matter of the parking. I'm objecting it quite stringently, and would like you to consider maybe other options. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nicholas. Our next speaker, Dr. Meena Shahada, taking over.
Councillors, ladies and gentlemen, neighbours, I represent, as a landowner of number 8 Realm Street, I have permission to represent my mother's interests for number 22 Realm Street. I'm a part owner of number 40 Denison Street, as well as 36 to 38 Denison Street. These are neighbouring properties. There's never been a problem of parking in Realm Street. The problem that it comes down to is illegal trucks, industrial machines like bobcats, diggers, watercraft that are parked for prolonged periods of time, mounting the curb on the green space. It has now become a dangerous place that my mother, who is in her 70s and has owned number 22 Realm Street for over 50 years, she's no longer able to mow the lawn there because the ground is uneven. And I'm worried that she may twist her ankle or some other injury as a result of these trucks. I've emailed 2 councillors pictures that I've had over the years, and I've got several others. And it is of great concern that the proposal is actually going to reward these people who are currently breaking the law. There is signage all throughout the area that says 3-ton limit, no trucks. And yet these trucks, these are not small trucks. We're talking about ginormous trucks. The spaces that are being proposed will adversely affect one of the investment properties, but also number 22 Realm Street, in that what's going to happen is the curb poses no obstacle for these 4-wheel drives. It poses no obstacle. If anything, it's going to encourage, reward. I understand that the councillors and the council are basically well-meaning people. But I feel that this proposal is simplistic and it's not future-proofed, because in future I may want to put a double driveway or put a, what they call, it's not a cubby house, but another, like a subdivision because smaller houses are the way of the future. And where are you going to do? Are you going to eat into the limited green space that we have? Now, I'm an environmentalist, and it's important for you to know. I also need to raise that decisions that we make are not just for today, they're also for tomorrow. The children of tomorrow might turn on Gardening Australia, and they might get the idea that changing their little nature strip into a native reserve to encourage the wildlife to come back, and it's not impossible. Where is that going to happen when we dig into these limited green spaces? When are we going to want them to be meandering between parked cars because you've dug into this green space? I've got a simpler proposal, and I really appreciate Pedro's proposal, is to have, rather than remove the trees that have been planted, to have 2 rows of staggered trees and possibly no parking on that side of the road, because there has not been a problem. I've never had my car damaged by any trucks, by any garbage trucks. I've never had problems parking. I'd like to raise the issue of unregistered vehicles. There is currently a jet ski that's been parked in the front of number 22 Realm Street for the last 2 months. It is propped up on pieces of wood and poses a hazard. I, as a simple person, would only suggest that maybe delaying your decision, and possibly even if it would be not asking too much, because now at the time of day would be a perfect time for you to drive past and get a real sense of what it's like to live and to experience the problems. And it's not a parking problem, it's a legal parking problem. Thank you for your time, councillors.
Can we change the recommendation to have an on-site meeting with residents and interested councillors? If Councillor Jensen wants to support that.
Yes, through you, Chair. The purpose of the report that's coming up to you tonight is for the outcomes of the community consultation. So Realm Street is a residential street in Arncliffe, and it was listed on the 22-23 Capital Works program as our traffic team had received a number of residential concerns about their cars being damaged due to traffic movements in the street. So a design was prepared that was attached to the community consultation that went out, and that looks at having a 1.5 metre nature strip, a 1 metre accessible footpath, which the street definitely needs, allows for approximately 9 new trees and 11 indented parking spaces. So we put out a residential notification in July 2022, and that notification covered 29 residents. That was made up of 18 residents living in the area and 11 owners separate to the tenancies. We only received 5 written responses back from the 29 letters that went out. 3 of those were in support and 2 of those were in opposition. And the concerns were from the residents that large vehicles and trucks are parking in the street, which we've notified our compliance team of to undertake some inspections. And also a concern around loss of green space, which is why we wanted to make sure as part of the design that we ensured there was a 1.5 metre nature strip and there was planting sufficient in the street.
I was going to suggest we've got 29 residents in that particular vicinity on that road. 11 are non-residents. They're property owners, whatever they are, that's fine. But we've only got 5 results, five responses back. It looks good on paper, 60% will support and 40 were against. But the loss of community green space, to me, it's a big issue. The lack of a footpath is a big issue. That should have been there years and years ago. But to indent and create a different environment will impact on the values of properties for people to live there. It's a no-brainer. Pushing the trucks away, it's a big issue. I've got to admit, I'm not familiar with the particular street. I've probably been down, but I'm not familiar with it. If it needs signage to push those trucks away, and if it needs rangers to go there after hours, because these trucks drive around during the day and they park there at night. The guys get in at 4 in the morning, start and go again. So we need to regulate that, put some signage up to keep them off footpath. As far as unregistered vehicles, that's a big bugbear of mine. I reported 2 last week, and I think I spoke with her about that. I reported 2, and I got 1 response back from council. So that's an issue we need to sharpen our pencil on and pursue. I know that's not part of what we're talking about today, but it's a big issue to residents when they see a car languishing outside their house for weeks on end with no stickers on it, with nothing happening. Now, it's a case of a jet ski sitting on blocks. It's even worse. It's even worse. So I suggest that we don't pursue this. Can I ask, has this gone through traffic committee or is it about to go?
It's not required to go through traffic committee.
It's on the line.
It's no, so no signage, no additional signage other than what's.
If there
Yep,
was signage, you would
that's
have to
correct.
provide.
So it's not a requirement.
In your view of what you assess, what the traffic, is there a need for signage on the other side?
So there are signs in place of like the 3-ton trucks, and there's no parking areas, but this part doesn't need any signage.
So I know for a fact from being on traffic committee in the past, if you have a section of road where cars can mount, and it's very common down around Arncliffe, they will mount it if there's no sign. Having the 3-ton limit, what does that mean? It means nothing. Absolutely nothing. Might as well scrap them. It means nothing. Unless we pursue it, I mean, we can have immediate no standing, no stopping signs, whatever. I don't think we have no standing anymore, but no stopping signs. And we don't regulate them, they're a waste of time. They're an absolute waste of time. And when it comes to heavy vehicles, I think a lot of people that live in our part of the world, and it's not just Arncliffe, they lay over overnight because it costs more to take to the depots, and it's a big impact on residents. So I think we need to, if we can deal with it in this part of the world, that's fine. If we move on to another street, then we deal with it again. I think the signage is an issue. I think the concern of Mr. Doss in terms of the green space, how long, I can't ask you a question, but through the chair, Mr. Doss would have lived there some time. He knows what the area is like. Once you start indenting, it changes the whole makeup of your area. It changes the way that you perceive your property. So I don't think he's in agreement. I think if we have an on-site meeting, we might get more people out there. More people, because the people that have spoken tonight will rally the people that live in the street. It's only a small street. It's only about 30 residents, 30 people that live there. And we can have a conversation around what their vision is for the street. And I believe a footpath is a minimum, especially if you've got a 60-kilometre road. If you don't have a footpath, you've got people with prams and nowadays shopping trolleys. Yeah, I know it's on the plan, but I'm saying, as a minimum, if we do nothing today, we should still do the footpath. Everyone needs a footpath.
Stazza, I'm in support of an on-site meeting. I'm wondering if there's any traffic data that could be brought to that as well, because I know this is a particularly short street. I'd be keen to know if there's any data that you already have on how fast cars are actually going down the street, because I, would be keen to know that. Also noting that this is a generous verge on this street as well. Not all streets are lucky to have verges of this size, but I believe that through a site meeting there may be other options that can be explored, so I'd be in support of the site meeting.
I was just going to make a suggestion that it seems like the footpath is something that is wanted and has been long wanted, so potentially we could change the committee recommendation to the parking improvements proposed, including a pedestrian path to go forward, but the other issues to be parked, so to speak, excuse the pun, until after the on-site meeting. So at least they can move forward and get something out of this process.
I don't think you can do them.
No. It's got to be part of the package.
You can have a footpath without the indentures.
Yeah, but it's going to be in the wrong position.
And then if you have the indentures later, there'll be an impact. So it's better to have the meeting and then move forward with what is proposed.
I was just going to also say I was at a transport masterclass today, and it was talking about how if you widen the roads, which is this is essentially going to do if you're moving the parking onto the verge, then that actually induces faster driving. So the more space you have for the cars, the faster cars will go down that street. So you actually are changing the nature of the traffic movements by moving these parking bays into the verge as well.
A lot of these streets they don't have they don't have centre line marking. Once you put centre line marking, it's a visual representation of a narrower laneway, and it physically slows people down. So you go to the master class, but we'll show you.
Well, if you put a centre line down this street, no one will be able to park on either side because they won't
what
be,
we want.
it's not wide enough. I only just make one comment because you worry about unregistered cars. You can look it up on RMS website to see, because if the car is registered, the council cannot touch it. We are stealing the car if it's registered. So that's why they often sit there, and the day they run out of rego, we usually put the sticker on. But then they've got to wait another 2 months or a month because we've got to legally try and find the owner. Then we can take it. So it takes a long time, but at any time you can look it up on the RMS rego check and check if the car's registered for yourself. But legally, the council can't touch a car that's registered.
Councillor Barlow, the incident I had, they told me it was registered, and I said, did you check the number plate properly? It happened to be a black Audi on 2 occasions. And the officer said, oh no, I got it wrong. Great. The thing is, as a council, we need to, I know I'm digressing now from what we're talking about. If there are unregistered vehicles, we've got to nip it in the bud and send the message out. I don't know how the message will get out there to people though, but if the vehicles are unregistered, impound them, like my other bugbear, shopping trolleys, impound them, take them to your depot director, and then do whatever you want with them.
I guess for the benefit of the residents, obviously, it can all be hashed out when we come down for an on-site meeting and all that sort of thing. But a lot of those trucks you see parked on the road, I have a friend who lives around the corner from there, so I'm quite familiar with the way people park on the street. Those aren't big enough to not be allowed to park on local roads. You really need to be thinking of a B double before they're allowed to park on local streets. So unfortunately, quite large vehicles and bobcats and so on.
Over 3 tonnes, it's illegal.
No, it's illegal to park if the people live near there, right? So they're allowed to drive to their homes.
No, you're not. If it's over 3 tonnes, you can't park in the street.
Yeah, you can, as long as you're travelling. But anyway, so things like those bobcats and things, it obviously shouldn't be there, but unfortunately we have no power to police that. Something you might want to consider that other streets have done is put in time parking, which is obviously very inconvenient for residents, but don't deal with those sort of issues where people leaving things like bobcats. But this can all be hashed out in the on-site. Is there any further discussion, councillors? All those in favour, all those against, those are carried. And thank you to the residents for moving on to reports, item CWA 22.2.
An amendment to a new motion. Sorry? Well, all I'm doing is moving it for further consultation. I thought someone might speak. Lytham Hall, we did have a meeting, but it wasn't thrashed out in detail like this, and I'm afraid that St George Historical Society's got a little bit concerned, so I'm moving that we have a further meeting with the details of this report to explain to them everything, because I can tell you some days they take $20 on a Sunday. That is their finances. So the report's very detailed, but I do feel that we need to have a further meeting with St George Historical Society before and thrash out the details.
Just before the officer goes on, so the issue is, as far as I can see, and I've spoken to Councillor Barlow and members of the Historical Society, they are the only group that we're asking to be involved in this. So we're going to tango with them.
That's correct.
Rather than bringing it here and us making a decision, we should run it past them, give them the heads up of what their expectation is, because I think they're dipping their toe really deep in the water on this occasion, especially to have an obligation for that organisation to be responsible for the upkeep of the property and to maintain the income stream that we expect. I know it's fairly light on in the first year, but then and beyond, because some of the people, you need to help them to get out of their car and walk into the building. So there's an issue there. The volunteers are very good people, but there's not enough of them for this particular venture. But we'll speak in a moment.
Councillor Jansen.
I just had some questions. Are we? Sorry, is that we'll get a summary of the report first. Sorry.
Okay, through the chair. Yeah, so the purpose of the report was to present some of the management options that we've been looking at through the Lytham Hall Advisory Committee, with the primary objective being to activate Lytham Hall and open it to the community. So the two management options that were considered were to enter into a licence agreement, i.e. with St George Historical Society, or for council to run it itself. So the various options are sort of outlined in some detail in the report. And it was ultimately recommended that we proceeded to enter into a management or a licence agreement with St George Historical Society. So they would be responsible for the day-to-day operation and management of the facility. On the other side of it was also proposed that the Lytham Hall Advisory Committee terms of reference be realigned to link in with establishing some sort of licence agreement whereby they can work in partnership with the St George Historical Society in terms of the business planning cycle and any issues which may come up, and look at fees and charges and any other proposals that come to council, reviewing the rental, for example, as well. So essentially that was the recommendation, that we would proceed to a licence agreement and further detailed negotiation.
Thank you. Councillor Jansen.
Just a question about the advisory committee meetings held so far. Where are they reported to?
Well, that's one of the issues that's prompted the review. The report highlights that the management structure was last reviewed around 2000. We haven't found that it has been reporting, and that's really the one of the issues that prompted the review and looking at the models for that to occur. Whichever way we go, the terms of reference that we would have for the committee would be that those minutes are reported through to council like all other committees.
Yeah, thank you, because I believe the new councillors group there are representatives and they have been already meeting. So is there minutes formally taken at those meetings? Oh, okay.
There's just through the chair, there's just a record of the outcomes of the meeting have been taken, yeah.
And just one last question. Does council give Lytham Hall a budget allocation?
No.
Okay. I couldn't find it in the budget. I looked, but I couldn't. Yeah.
I'll just say something because I'm on the committee, as Liz and Andrew are. We have had a meeting in council chambers with the Lytham Hall people. The St George Historical, I beg your pardon. I think we did go through everything and it was quite clear. The problem is people are quite elderly and quite elderly. And I think it was hard for them to take in everything that we were talking about. It was complicated. One of the people there, Tina Workman, she really took it all in, but she's actually not. No, she's not old, but she took it all in. But the other people didn't. I could see that at the time by some of the questions they were asked. So I'm happy if we have another meeting, but I just wanted to stress that I don't think it was a matter of we didn't explain properly. I think it was explained well. It was just a matter of comprehension on their part. So maybe we need to keep it simple, stupid, when we meet them again, so there's not confusion. I am concerned about, I know it says 1 year free of rent and then it'll be 4,450, I think it was. I am, as Andrew said, concerned about that, whether they could even raise that. But anyway, I guess because it does say it would be reviewed after a year, so, that's not set in stone. Thank you. Yep.
So if a licence agreement is entered into, the St George Historical Society then have the right to rent those spaces out. And and gain income. Is that correct?
Yeah, through the chair, yes, that's the situation. Yeah, so that they'd be responsible for the day-to-day operation of the facility, and including any bookings, any tours that go on. They would collect all the revenues and all those operational issues, which takes it away from council.
And on that, that was one of the ways they were earning income before. They were having weddings in the garden, because they're actually paying for a lot of things themselves. They're not, I mean, at the moment, and the licence agreement says this, they're presently responsible for all the internal maintenance, and the council is responsible for the external maintenance. But that also means like the roof needed repair, as it says in the report. So council's paying for more expensive maintenance, but the society is looking after the inside, keeping it clean, all that sort of thing. So really the only way they earn money is by having weddings in the garden, having tour groups through, which they charge money for. But during COVID, all that died. And now it's got to be built up again. It's not going to be easy, and it needs a bit of work inside. It's a bit of a hodgepodge. So, yeah, so it's, you know, they do a lot of work. Very elderly people, I again repeat, do a lot of work. You know, you've got to admire what they've done so far.
You've got to tip your hat to that particular group. They're very dedicated and very driven in keeping the house open and alive. That's what it needs. It needs to be open and alive for people to enjoy it. I don't think that's going to happen quite easily. This licence agreement works for football clubs, soccer clubs, all these other facilities that we have, where they've got a captive audience, which is seasonal. It comes and goes. They have 300 kids again registering every year, doing their thing. They have their barbecues. They have this and they have that. Putting a big ball and chain around the neck of this organisation to deliver $4,500 in an annual income. And having to also pay for utilities. I don't know what other things that have been incorporated specifically, but I'd imagine that have gas, electricity, that sort of utilities, telephone and so on. They need to cover that as well. I think they'll be out the back door very quickly. And that's not talking about upkeep. And then let's go and ask a few questions. Is the building compliant? Have we done enough to make it compliant? I'll ask the property team, they're here. They're cutting-edge operators here. They know about all their assets. Is that an asset? Is that a piece of infrastructure that's got a compliant footprint? In other words, is it fire compliant? Can people go up the stairs, for example? Because I know I came down the stairs a few times and almost bowled over. I don't believe it's compliant to have people in there unless you restrict parts of the house. Is that a question someone can answer in this room? Look, I'm happy to take that one on notice and check the asset register, whether it's fire compliant. Well, how are we going to give a licence to an organisation? Okay, because I do believe there are issues that need to be addressed before we enter into an agreement with this organisation. The stairs in particular, going up to the second level, are very problematic. If you've got school children or whatever going up the stairs, I don't know how far people visit the site. I know you can walk around the downstairs rooms very comfortably, very easily, fantastically, but going up the stairs is a bit of a drama, and a lot of the exhibits are upstairs. If you go up there in that one of the turrets, and near where we found that old flag, there's a lot of quality items there that people can view and enjoy. So I'd like to know, before we get to the council meeting, have we explored these things and are offering a full service a full benefit to these people, so they can actually utilise what needs to be done to generate that income? Because the gardens are fantastic. There's no argument there. The gates open and close. Council green space people go in there and tidy it up and plant the flowers and mulch and so on. But inside's another case. Inside, you've got to be very dedicated, very committed. There's very expensive. I know there's a table in there I wasn't allowed to sit at because it's a very expensive table owned by the National Trust, and we have care and control over it. There's a lot of items there that we have to be very careful to maintain them. So the other question is, who carries the insurance? Is it council or is it the historical society? There's a lot of questions that are still out in the wilderness that need to become...
I can answer some if you want.
Yeah, go.
Okay.
Tell us about the fire issue first.
Okay. Well, I can't answer the fire issue because I'm not
That's all right.
qualified, I guess, to make a call on that. But yeah, just in terms of some of the operational issues. So with the building, council remains as the asset owner. So we're responsible for the structural integrity of the building. So the arrangement was more on the lines of the lessee would basically just keep the place clean and tidy. Was always the intention that we would continue to maintain the gardens and the like. Insurances, we've got insurance for the building. We've also got our own public liability, but the society does as well. So if they're to have activities there and they're negligent or in showing the premises, for example, they've got to be covered by that as well. In terms of the items which are on display, I'm going through the inventories. I've got a couple of contacts there with National, the Historic Homes Trust to run through just to see on their assets, and also our own staff have provided me some inventories as well. So.
Thank you, Councillor Jansen.
I noticed that in the report that one of council's roles was to look for grants as well. So I think collaboratively, this project is, a really great opportunity. There are lots and lots of grants out there for historic and heritage properties, as well as volunteers that work on site. I think if the St George Historical Society are supported collaboratively through council, that this represents a really terrific opportunity to further history and heritage in our LGA, as well as support volunteering.
Councillor Douglas.
I have a question around the fee that we're proposing to charge for the licence. There's a significant fee for a community group to raise, which is mentioned in the report. However, in the next report around the proposed licence to Rockdale Illindan Soccer Club, there's no licence fee mentioned. So I don't understand why we have a fee mentioned in one report and not in the other. Can I ask that question to the Chair?
Sure.
Through the chair, so just with relation to the Rockdale, and we actually haven't got to the part of finalising the licences yet. The report that we're about to go through just simply deals with the ministerial response.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Lawyer. I think in general, honestly, I support further consultation. But I do think there's value in sort of operationalising this. You said it yourself. You want to get people through these places. I don't think anyone's proposing that if this doesn't work in 12 months, that these guys are going to start being charged rent and being driven out.
With respect, Chair, and I think Anne touched on it, the people that are in the Historical Society are fantastic people, but some of them are elderly. And how can I say, you can't push them over the tipping point.
Oh no, look, I totally agree. That's why we've got to, but I think it's worth going through this business planning process. If we go, well, they're not going to be able to, which it sounds like they're not going to be able to.
Well, there are a group of
this.
people like Tina, for instance. She's a bit overbearing on the group, which is fair enough.
She also doesn't live here anymore.
Well,
yeah, she's moved.
If she's moved, it's another case, and
Somebody's
we're relying on her for the asset register, so to speak. We need to tread carefully. I'm just trying to say, if we enter into a group, because I ask a few questions, are you an association? Do you have an incorporation number? No answers will come. I don't know. We've obviously investigated that. We'll go down that path when the time comes. We just need a bit of assurance on what we're doing.
Yeah, and I think it's point well taken that these, at the moment there's one group interested in this site, and we don't want to go, well, we need to operationalise this or bring people through, on some sort of semi-commercial basis, and then get rid of the only people who are interested in the building. But I'm sure that will be dealt with, and officers will take that on board.
Another future option is to entice more people to become involved in the historical trust and you know, promote an opportunity for volunteering and, you know, a bit like our boards try and recruit people that have the skills that are then of benefit to running something like this.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was just, I felt that we needed to have further consultation with the group, because we did, I know you outlined it all and all that, but then when you see it all in black and white, and the maintenance is, you've got to pay the electricity bill, we don't even know what the electricity bill is, because it was never paid for. I think the phone's been disconnected, but I did notify council when NBN went through, and obviously I don't think it's connected. So that's why I feel we just need one more meeting to try and sort it all out, and then go from there, and then it can come back to council. And I think they'll be happy. I mean, we can use Cogra Historical Society. They were going to tender that out, and no one's doing it. And Cogra Society are doing Cars Cottage again now. So the expertise is there, but I feel we just need to just massage this a bit, and then I think everyone will be happy.
But I think also, just in closing, in the meantime, we should address those issues, fire compliance, if there's asbestos issues, bring them to the table so these people know what they're in for, whether the stairs are compliant. You might need rail, it might need a disabled bathroom, I don't know what it needs for people to access the building. It may need these things, I don't know from that perspective, but surely we could have that ready to be discussed as a mirror of the licence agreement as we move forward.
Right. I'm sure the officers will make sure the building doesn't burn down. Is there any further discussion? A lot of nodding. Sorry, who is that? Oh, Councillor Werner. I can't. We need video, I think. Councillor Werner.
Thank you. I was just wondering if council had considered the arrangements that are in place for other historical houses, because I heard that the Cogra Historical Society paid around $700 last year, and that does seem quite a lot less. So I was wondering if council would consider some other arrangements like profit sharing or to what extent is the licence fee negotiable?
Through the chair, I think in the first instance, council had to be true to its own policy in terms of applying the RASP, and that is the calculation. We accept that there is work to be done, and I think the business plan by the society will inform it as well as council as to what it can achieve, and that'll be the basis probably for a discussion after the first year as to what type of, whether any further subsidy or waiver is beneficial to the organisation.
Thank you. Can I ask another question?
Yeah, please go ahead, Councillor Werner.
Thank you. The other question was about the bathrooms and the kitchen, because people have said that it's very difficult to hire out as a venue without a modern kitchen. So just wondering if council could maybe provide a report as to how much it would cost to bring the hall up to standard in those terms, like with maybe new kitchen and new bathrooms.
Yeah, and I don't think if we're struggling to scrape together $4,000 of rent a year, we're going to pay off a commercial kitchen, to be honest. And I think we need to be quite realistic. That I don't think the St George Historical Society is going to be able to manage a commercial venue of that nature either. So.
There's got to be a crack in the floor too.
Yeah. And through the chair, I think with a lot of those...
The New South Wales Heritage Grants have just been released the last week, I think it is, and they're looking at making heritage properties more accessible. I haven't looked at them properly because where I live we've got Tempe House, so we're interested in, that's why I know about it, but would council be able to have a look at what's available there and see if there's anything that we could use towards Lytham Hall?
Yeah, yeah, just on the kitchen, through the chair, sorry. So with a lot of events these days, there's food trucks and the like that, so you can sort of bring in the catering. But it'll be all part of that business plan process if we identify that there is a real need to generate income through having major events and the like. We would have to address those sorts of issues.
I think it's a long bow to draw, though, to build a commercial kitchen in a state heritage listed item. It's very hard. It's hard to change a light bulb, let alone put a commercial kitchen in.
Councillor Jansen.
So will they be offered mentoring in the development of the business plan?
Yeah, through the chair. So the intention, if we amend the terms of reference of the advisory committee, the intention would be under the licence agreement that they would work with council's advisory committee in formulating that business plan, because there's no point having expectations up here when we can't deliver. So it's I guess a bit of a partnership there.
Realistically, I feel like council needs to guide these guys don't have the time, skills, or will to prepare a business plan. I don't think so.
Yes,
it really needs to be. So obviously they need to be making the decisions in formulating that, but the secretarial and advisory support needs to come from us. Yeah. I think we have any further discussion. All those in favour, all those against, declare that carried. Item CWA 22.023, moved Councillor Curry, seconded Councillor Jansen. Any discussion? Right. All those in favour, all those against.
I've got some questions.
Sure, Councillor Werner.
Thank you. I did read the report, and it looks like the department said that there were other soccer clubs that may want to use the Brighton Memorial, and also other groups like from the school and so on. Can council tell us which groups are also interested in Brighton Memorial?
Through the chair. The Department of Planning didn't outline which specific groups that they were referring to. We do know that the school does use Brighton Memorial and is currently using Brighton Memorial with the soccer facilities in place. There was a club that was using Brighton Memorial before the M6 works commenced and the upgrade works occurred at Brighton Memorial, and that club was relocated to other facilities in Ador Reserve. But in terms of what the Department of Planning were referring to, there was no specific outline of which groups they had in mind.
Councillor Douglas.
Could we just have a report on the report or the?
So do you want to give us a quick summary, please?
Through the chair, yes.
Mr. Harrard.
This report deals with a proposed licence to Rockdale Illidan Soccer Club over fields in Brighton Memorial that have been newly upgraded. The report is off the back of a number of reports that have gone through Sport and Rec Committee and in turn Council. The club used to occupy grounds at what we call Bicentennial Park East, which is open space adjoining Brighton Memorial. However, that agreement had to come to an end to facilitate the construction of the M6 project and those grounds being taken offline to facilitate the construction. So M6 and the transport team went through and upgraded a number of reserves, Brighton Memorial being one of those, and Council considered a report to support a licence on a like length of term that Rockdale Illidan had on the adjoining reserve. During that, or as part of the course of setting up that licence, we have to advertise it. We received objections to that licence, which means that automatically goes to the Minister for Local Government to make a determination. They in turn engage with the Department of Planning to pull a report together to assist them in making a final decision, and we're at that point at the moment. So the Office of Local Government, acting on behalf of the Minister, has come back to Council and said we need you to respond to 5 areas, being length of term, justification for the licence, and how council has considered other groups as part of this licence proposal. So the report outlines, or addresses each of those 5 points and outlines a justification to proceed with the current proposal, being to grant the club a licence for a like term that they had to surrender to enable the M6 works to proceed. The report also addresses another aspect somewhat related, which was the proposed licence itself. So the club over Bicentennial Park East had, in their old agreement, set times that they could use those fields, and they aligned with the full DA approved hours, so first thing in the morning to late in the afternoon. And when those grounds were not in use, the club had to make it available for the public to use, and that worked for Bicentennial Park East. Under the new licence that we're considering for Brighton Memorial, the new facility, the clubs seek to have a similar sort of arrangement in place where they're allocated the full times and then hand back to allow public use. What we're proposing is, and seeking guidance through this report, is to align with how other synthetic facilities are used, in that there are set hours, and then outside of those hours, council would book the space. So that a different level of control over how the public access that site.
So my question is that the main bone of contention seems to be over the proposed licence term being 10 years instead of 5 years. Could you just unpack for me the reasons behind that?
Mm-hmm. So the original term council advertised on was for 10 years. At that point in time, when a decision was made to surrender one licence and grant another one, the club had effectively 10 years left on that agreement. As time has marched on, there's give or take about 8 years left on what they would have had as a residual term for Bicentennial Park East. What the department has come back and proposed is for council to consider a term of 5 years plus a 2-year option. In a leasing scenario, the option is always on the tenant, so the owner is ultimately committed to 7 years. So when we considered that proposal, we thought that there was no material difference in what council was originally seeking to give them a licence up to their original term they had, and what the department was proposing.
So it's basically, there's about a year's difference between
Yes.
what's proposed by council now as opposed to what was proposed originally.
In effect, yeah. So
Or what was agreed originally.
Yeah. So even if the club have 5 years plus a 2-year option, at year 5 they can decide to pull out. However, council as a landlord can't. They're bound to give that full term plus the option.
Thank you.
Anything further?
Just for the sake of...
I've got one more question.
Sorry, I think Councillor Souness was first.
Councillor Warner now first.
Sure. Councillor Werner?
Thank you. I'm just wondering what's happening to Bicentennial Park East. Is that, when is that coming back online, or is it going to be demolished?
Through the chair, that site is currently offline. Principally, Bicentennial Park East is owned by Transport directly. Council were the tenant, who in turn subtenanted to the club. It's understood at the end of the project that most of that reserve will come back to council. There will be components that won't come back, and they'll be those areas that are occupied by motorway infrastructure, so the exit portal and similar sort of stuff.
Thank you. So is that field that's there, is that staying there, or will that be demolished?
Through the chair.
Which field are you talking about?
Bicentennial Park East.
Well, that remains to be seen, doesn't it? They've committed to give it back, but
What it looks like,
let's wait and see.
But currently, all the fields within Bicentennial Park East are demolished now, as we speak.
It's a construction site at the moment. Like they're using it to store their vehicles and so on. They said they might reinstate it.
Oh, they'll make it nice. Through the chair, what are the times that the public can use that particular field we're talking about now, and public, and what are the times that the school can use it? Just for clarity.
Through the chair. So, under the licence, council are proposing to allow the club to use it Monday through to Friday, 4:30 to 9:30 p.m. Saturday 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. and Sunday 8 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Hours outside of that use would be made available to the public.
Because you mentioned earlier that the council can lease out the park at other times.
Book it out, yes.
Book it out to other people. Is Brighton Public School better off or worse off under this arrangement?
Through the chair. What the club are proposing and what council are proposing do have a public use. What council are proposing is to have control over when that public use is made available. From what I understand, the school are currently using that site.
Yeah, I don't think
as it is.
Brighton have any issue getting access to the park.
Just asking, are they better off or worse off? Or could be, they're happy as it is. Same use.
Yeah. Great question yet to the school to be asked, but at the moment it's currently working. There is a natural compression anyway on that open space because we've lost Bicentennial Park East while the M6 is being constructed.
Just to add to that and through the chair, I think what council is proposing and to manage the booking would certainly be a plus when going back to the minister, because that then indicates our commitment to make it available when not in use by the club through our booking system, and also provides a fair and ready access to the school and other users to be able to book it through our booking system.
So if Brighton needed to use it, they would have to book it, so they could put obviously an ongoing booking in place. Do they need to pay for that booking?
I would have to confer with the rec team, but the way I understand it at the moment, they just spill out onto the fields. They don't book it. They book it for school events, but we can take that question on notice.
I know in the past they've just casually used it. There's no one there. They'd have their weekly sport on there, or like you say, spill out if they need to during their PE times and so on. That's why I'm asking: are they better or worse off under this arrangement? If now we're applying a fee to them because the arrangements have changed with another sort of commercial organisation. Does it change it for them?
I think at the moment they're supposed to, in theory, they're supposed to pay a hiring fee for the.
Yeah, of course,
we just
40
don't
cents
do
a child
it.
or something. Yeah. Okay.
Which I don't think,
I don't think
anyone
we've
wants
charged it for
to
long.
penalise the local public schools. I assume there's no intention to start policing Brighton's use of the land.
And just a last question of the officer through the chair. In terms of what the payment arrangements are, have they changed because we move forward, or are we retaining exactly what they were on plus CPI increases?
Through the chair, the existing rent won't be that they paid under Bicentennial Park East won't be the existing rent that or the new rent they pay for Brighton Memorial. That'll be same process as for Lytham Hall and other community facilities. Council will seek a market valuation, and the club will be entitled to seek a rental subsidy calculated under the RASP.
Thank you. Anything further? Councillor Barlow.
No, I'll just give you the history. I'll give you the history of the park. It was being sold by.
Have the history.
No. Just so people mightn't know that the Education Department, in their wisdom, was going to sell the park because they decided they didn't need it, and Peter Bryan at the time, I think, was mayor, and council purchased it for $1 million. So we're the ones as council that saved that green space.
Great purchase. We're not getting a park like that for $1 million anymore.
That did as well.
It did well. It was years ago, before my time.
That's real council days.
And the park is looking very nice now, I've got to say.
Because the school had no playground.
Anyway, all those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Item CWA 22.024. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Jansen. Second. Oh, no, she's declared a non-pecuniary. Move Councillor Jansen. Seconded Councillor Souness. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say that I thought it was a terrific report with great information. Enjoyed looking at the maps and the presentation, so thank you for that to the director for the report. Notice there's a real difference between areas of reporting, so maybe we're all hoons around Botany and Mascot, but thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
I also thank the staff. I mean, it's concerning to me because clearly it's a very strong indication that we know that there's a problem in Brighton Le Sands. It's very clear that there is a big problem in Brighton Le Sands from this, and this hasn't even been opened over summer. So summer is traditionally the time when we have the most problems, and this has been a winter report, so this is on the off season. So I'm glad that they're going to keep the reporting process open, but I think it's important that we also, I want to make a change to the officer recommendation that we do another push in terms of publicity over the summer so that people maybe see what has been reported on so far, but are actually encouraged to engage in the process again and explain why we're asking them to do that.
Tack on to the end of point 3 if you scroll down.
And I think to keep in mind that we've got the no right turn from Bay Street, which is implemented over the summer, and then we've also got the More Police, which is that program that council partners with police in order to try and accommodate that that summer potential increase.
Yeah, but could we have that addition to the end of point 3 that we that the council remain as well as remain open to the public to allow data to continue to collect during the summer months of 2022 and 2023, that council do another public awareness or advertising push, asking people to report or use the tool or be aware to use the tool or something?
Look, we can support that. My issue is this, especially if you're going to pick on Brighton, we should have rangers that are there after 6 p.m. If we need to create different versions of rangers and call them what we want, we need to book the people that park illegally. And there's a lot of people that park illegally there that are of the hoon, by definition hoons. You can tell by the cars. Let's not be stupid. If you book them, they park in the police spot that's opposite Bay Vista. They park in front of the, I could give you by rote, they park in front of the RSL, they park in front of Avocado and say, look at my Lamborghini and all this sort of crap. We've got to book them and book them and book them and book them until we run out of paper in our little machines. But do we do that? I'm going to ask a question at the next council meeting, that question on notice. How many people have we booked over Saturdays in the Brighton precinct on Bay Street and the surrounding streets in the past year? And I don't think we're going to have too many numbers.
Yeah, through the LPR.
Yeah, but the LPR cameras aren't everywhere.
Drive-by as well. The drive-by LPR.
That's fine.
Yeah, I mean,
that's fine, but they're not there after hours when we need to sting these guys.
Speaking of business cases, I mean, I really think that's something that needs to be reviewed, is after hours rangers. I mean, I know the objection to this was always that, you know, it's unsafe potentially at night, particularly to have one person on. But now that we've got these LPR, you know, whiz-bang LPR cars that can automatically book people,
they can go for a
if
drive between
this is
quarters.
a revenue positive activity, you know, potentially we should have this thing driving around 24 hours a day. Like, there's honestly not you know, to that degree, but seriously, it is an issue with people. You know, a lot of people in the area, they're wise to the fact that after about 9 p.m. there are no rangers, so you're not going to get booked. But we should look at that, whether or not we can, you know, I suspect, you know, it would very easily become a revenue positive case, so that, you know, is supported by the residents.
But Chair, it's not just parking in the designated spots. Fair enough, I get that, right? After hours, after 6 p.m, after whatever, you can stay there all night by all intents and purposes. But all these people parking, the no stopping, the no standing.
No,
areas,
that's exactly right.
They should
And
be-
there
they
are a
should
lot
be-
of the back streets around there where
the
people
good
just stop
people
in, no
inverted
stopping.
commas,
Yeah.
the good people in inverted commas won't do that. They'll keep on driving around looking for a spot.
But again, this is what, you know, if we have an LPR camera roaming around on Friday, Saturday night, we will start catching these people. Councillor Jansen.
Councillor Douglas, I'm happy to support that addition, but shouldn't we be doing public awareness each time there is a piece that's delivered about LPR cameras or new solar cameras? So that could be kind of, that messaging could be accompanying each piece of info that goes out about potential hooning and kind of controls for that. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Promote some of the recent work, because obviously councillors work very hard to address some of these issues.
The problem is the audience doesn't. The audience we need to address it to doesn't understand any of that. They don't. They're not part of that.
Newsletters. Councillor Barlow.
Just a question. I can see hooning is speeding brackets. So that's the definition of how do you know they're speeding. I worry, you know, how do you know they're speeding? But the new little camera, the smiley things, do they record all the speeding, or is it just to show you that you? Because I drove past one today and I thought, oh, here, he was doing 49. So I've got a smiley face. So does that? So do we get a record of the speeding, or is it just alerting to the driver that they are speeding or doing?
Through the chair. Through the chair, it does collect all the data, so we download that data from. It's like a
So in
traffic.
other words, we will now know who is speeding or who's imagining the speeding. That's good.
We get the actual traffic data, the speeds that they go, the time of the day.
It's quite funny, the smiley.
I just
And could we have that on the Facebook or whatever? It's really good.
Could I just make
Councillor
one final
Douglas.
point? So as I mentioned, I went to a transport masterclass today, and I was speaking to someone from Transport New South Wales, who is a senior urban designer, urban design roads and waterways. And he pointed out to me that we were discussing these issues around Bay Street and the Grand Parade, and you know, the council have done the Streets Alive Festival, and there's an appetite for activating these as open spaces for the community to help tackle these dangerous driving and nuisance behaviours. He pointed out to me that in the major projects planning portal for the M6, it's point E134, that there's actually a road network performance plan that says that the M6, there must be consideration of movement and place analysis and local initiatives such as local area improvement strategies and potential land use changes and any traffic changes as a result of other major projects within the project area. So there is actually a clause in the contract that the government has around the M6 that as a part of doing the M6 that they look at changes to land use and road use around the local area. So we do have this strategic opportunity to actually address this. And the way they explained traffic management in this transport masterclass is that it's not a liquid where it just moves into spaces. It's a gas. You can actually make it dissolve. So, but at the same time, it will fill up the amount of space that there is. So if there's more roads, traffic will fill those roads. So having the opening of the M6 is a strategic moment for us to actually reimagine the spaces in Bay Street and the Grand Parade and potentially remove some lanes and make these public spaces. And it will be probably the only chance we get in the next 100 years to actually really seriously do that. So looking at this data today, I think it's a very clear indication that there is a big problem, and we do have an opportunity to address this as a council moving forward by using this trigger that's before us with the M6.
Through the chair, I suggest the council talk to this masterclass people and talk about the 4.6 height limitation for heavy vehicles. There's an actual map that they provide when you do your heavy vehicle test, which directs heavy vehicles and vehicles that are over a certain height restriction. In other words, if you're carrying containers, B-doubles and the rest, to only use specific roads. Grand Parade is obviously one of them, but so is Bay Street. It's a dedicated heavy vehicle road. Now, to change the thinking around that, it's going to be very hard because there's one on, where's the other one? There's one on Ramsgate Road, there's one on President Avenue, and there's Bay Street. There are no more.
And West Botany.
And West Botany Street, but West Botany Street goes in another direction. They're the only streets that we have that are dedicated heavy vehicle streets to allow vehicles that are over height and overweight. So there's a lot of work to be done, and there's a lot of angst to be had to be able to change those things. And they won't change. They won't change in a long time, because if you look at Bay Street, it's designated to be widened. A lot of the shops on the northern side have got road reservations on them. I actually went to try and buy some, and they told me there's 4-metre road reservations. Keep away from them. Further down, I think the chair knows, he lives in an apartment there. It's been set back so many metres because it's got a road reservation obligation. So down the track, Transport for New South Wales will say, well, I'm sorry, people of Bayside, we need to get the vehicles through here. It's like King George's Road. They've started a road widening process now where they're taking all the, I think it's the western side of the road is being widened another 2 lanes.
So the point of this person from Traffic for New South Wales is that we have a role in the community to, as council, to advocate and agitate for change on behalf of the community, and that it actually says in here that M6 they have to provide things like modelling of traffic import packs and whatnot. So we do have some strategic triggers here that we could use to agitate for the community.
And fundamentally, the problem is with this person from Transport for New South Wales colleague, because they do consider these things. You go to the EIS and look at the traffic management plan in there, and what their plan for it is that there is more traffic. They do heat mapping of how traffic changes are going to happen. This is all in, these documents are years old now, but. There's building these roads. It doesn't, as you said, it doesn't take traffic away. It actually induces traffic, and it's projected to increase traffic along the Grand Parade and Bay Street. That's their consideration of local use changes.
I was going to suggest the only way to move away from heavy vehicle traffic, because that's what keeps these roads active, because if you took them away, you can go up other streets, get rid of Port Botany, advocate for that, move the airport. So there's so many things that need to happen which are unlikely in our lifetime. Maybe when the rail duplication goes in, more containers will go by rail rather than road, by all means. But now we're just copying the brunt of all this industrial activity happening around the bay, and we're paying the brunt. The vehicles have to move. There's no 2 ways about it. We sleep at night and the vehicles are still going. They're coming and going. They're coming and going. It doesn't stop.
Anyway, look, I think we're getting away from the point of the motion. But yes, I think it's a great idea to continue and to promote this over the summer. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Item CWA 22.025, M6 Stage 1. Speaking of our friends at Transport for New South Wales, parking loss. Do I have a mover and a seconder?
I don't want a parking lot.
Moved Councillor Douglas. Seconded Councillor Jansen. Any discussion?
So have they discussed how much money they're going to give us? No?
M6, I think they've already...
Well, we can negotiate.
How much more do you want, Liz?
I don't think they're going to cough up any money. Any discussion?
I'd just like to ask one question through the officers, if someone clear on it. Right next to the Illingdon football field, there's a new car park created. We've got a car park there already. There's another one that's been gravelled off. Is that a long-term thing that's going to happen, or is it something for this particular development?
Through your chair, no, that's a temporary car park. The car park that's always been there, or been there for a long time, will be remaining, but that's the only car park proposed there.
Yep. Anything further? No. All those in favour, all those against, declare that carried. Item CWA 22.026, update on Cafe to Pena Reserve. I move Councillor Souness. Seconded Councillor Fardell. Any discussions, questions?
Well, can we ask a little bit of update on
Yeah, can we get a quick summary?
love to talk about their properties. Oh, good to see you.
Through the chair.
Is it fire? Do we think it's fire compliant? Hopefully.
So the purpose of the report that's been brought up is an update on the actual redevelopment of the La Beach Hut. So the current cafe and building is at the end of its life. There are a lot of issues in terms of compliance. We undertook an opportunities and constraints project and did some have your say consultation in 2021 and also presented that to councillors. As part of that process, we've now undertaken a concept design which we're preparing for development application lodgement. But one of the things to note is that the land that the current facility is on is Bayside Council owned, but it is through the LEP not permissible for us to develop as a new cafe and restaurant, so it does require a planning proposal. And some councillors may recall that a similar process was undertaken for Carl Park Cafe, where the RE1 land was permitted to have a cafe building on that land. So it would be the same process for this. This year's City Projects program also includes a review and design of the adjacent car park. So to ensure we holistically look at the project, we want to make sure that we have a concept design for that car park, accessible parking and drop-off incorporated into the overall design. Gives us the opportunity to consult with the school and also go through our traffic committee. So there is a program listed where we'll be doing some consultation over the next 6 weeks, and then we'll be lodging a DA and a planning proposal. Now, once the development approval is in place, and I've been working very closely with the properties team, that's the time when we would go out for tenancy tender.
Councillor Curry.
Thank you. Can I just ask, are we, at what point, and is there a process where we're going to ask for a review from industry experts as to have we, does the concept plan accommodate a wide range of potential tenders?
Through the chair, that's already been occurring as part of the planning. So when we undertook the Have Your Say review, we also worked with some external providers to look at the types of spaces that we need. So you may see on the plan there's staff rooms, separate dry store, cold room store, staff actual facilities in terms of toilets and things like that. So a space of this size would require those additional, it's not sort of a pop-up cafe.
Great, thank you.
No problem.
Councillor Jansen.
Are there any opportunities for this to design to incorporate the sort of the themed creative elements that the Peter DePina Reserve toilet block has, like the mural treatment, as well as the little mosaic features in the playground, and potentially get an artist involved in the design stage so they're not kind of like off-the-shelf creative elements?
Through the chair, yes, that's absolutely a possibility. We've been working closely with the environmental and resilience team to look at the types of materials we use in this facility. So we're looking at low embodied energy materials, but having some artwork and connecting it to those other buildings, I think will definitely be part of that design process, and happy to take that on board.
Because this would be terrific to do a EOI as well, and potentially work with some local artists to really sort of make that area, site specific in terms of that creative element.
Great idea, Councillor Jansen. Councillor Barlow.
No, it's just a question with the parking, because we've already had a meeting down there a long time ago. Has the parking changed since then, or it's going to be refined? We're going to try and, the school has to change, so it's a similar meeting. We won't, yeah, okay.
Yeah, through the chair, yes, that meeting that we attended, definitely it's a continuation of that. So now we've got the funds to implement a full detailed design and go through our traffic committee.
So you'll be discussing things with the school to try and do whatever you can to relieve their disastrous
Yes.
parking?
Yes, we've met with them twice. They'd like to work with council on improving that drop-off process, so they'll be heavily consulted as part of this process.
Councillor Sonis.
So I take it the restaurant part's gone now? It's not part of the design?
No, the restaurant is part of the design.
No, but there is a
absolutely.
restaurant, but now
Yes.
there's a cafe and there's a restaurant behind, or another facility behind it that's gone.
So attached on the plan that you will see, there's a kitchen that services both the kiosk side and the restaurant side, which was part of the original
Okay.
option that we presented.
So what I was going to say is the restaurant will need dedicated parking. Now, at the moment, it's a disaster there, even with the low volumes of what's going on. It's really hard to get a parking space, even though we've changed the restrictive hours. Obviously, don't have rangers that can travel that far to Doll's Point, so far away on a Sunday. We need to consider that as a moving forward situation. And we've got nighttime restrictions now. You can't be there after a certain time. We've got to change that. Obviously, we've got to go to traffic committee. But let's not have expectations of the neighbourhood that we're going to continue that after this facility is built, because it needs to have at least trading till midnight if it's a decent restaurant. You can't just close at 5 o'clock because other neighbours have to park.
The design of the car park will be the full western car park, and there's the series of sort of 3 banks along there, and then the full eastern car park around the section that's been closed off. We'll look at all of that area as part of a feasibility and improving the size.
Because if that's open to the public, they will fill it.
Of course.
It's gas, it'll fill it.
Yes. Yep.
There's no two ways about it. There's no two ways about it. The other thing I was going to say is, in terms of the facility itself, it's a very popular destination. I happen to live nearby. It's a very popular destination. A lot of people walk up there. They're happy to spend money, right? But you try to attract people further afield. So the parking is very, very crucial. How we organise it, I don't know. Will there be dedicated toilets when the kiosk is open on its own?
Yes, so there's facilities specifically for the tenant, and then there's external toilets specifically for the park users.
For the park users, okay. Okay, that's very good, because it's a fair hike to go to the other one.
We have a children's toilet as well as an accessible toilet, so it's like a parents' facility and an accessible facility in the building.
So we've got three
Standalone.
bathrooms. So we've got 3 bathrooms.
That's external. Internal, you've got male, female, and an accessible as well.
I think we should consider putting more bathrooms in.
Externally.
It's never enough. There are a lot of people. There are a lot of people that use that park in summer. There are a lot of people. We're building it now. This is my view. We're building things. We might as well make it 6, and not those style that we have. That's a big elongated thing. That's a bit daunting. Those ones. I don't know if there's a better design than that.
You still have the toilet. Yeah, there's a large toilet.
Yeah.
It's a fair way.
It's 100 metres away.
How? There are a lot of people. You've been there on summer, obviously you have.
I
There's
have
a lot
obviously
of
been
people
there in summer.
that use that facility.
I'm sure we can maintain an adequate number of
I wasn't
toilets.
there. I was up the road doing other things, and you know where I was. I was just going to suggest, if we're building facilities, because look, you're going to use that facility at night. The one in the park, no one's going to use that after hours, right? Unless they're in the wrong place at the wrong time.
But
the thing is,
Sorry, we're proposing, so to be clear, they're proposing toilets for the restaurant,
Yes.
toilets for the public outside as well,
yeah, but I'm saying, Chair, there's only 3 toilets. I would just suggest we're building the toilets. They're not a bigger cost to have, say, 6 versus 3, or 5 versus 3.
So for the restaurant, there's 5, and then externally, there's 2
Well, that's what I'm saying. There should be. I believe it should be more. Given
for
where
the
it is.
external.
Yeah.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favour, all those against, declare that carried. Item CWA 22.028, Sir Joseph Banks Park. Can I have a mover? Councillor Jansen, seconded Councillor Curry. Any discussion?
I just wanted to say that the informal botany pump track group were very thrilled with this idea, especially the idea given in the report that the location is the actual informal pump track site that they created during lockdown. So it's like formalising what they actually did do. So thank you for that. They wanted to be here tonight as well, but they were a bit nervous about speaking. So I think this is a good opportunity to now access any funding in future. So Thank you. I'm really supportive of this one.
Councillor Curry?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great potential project and very well supported by community. One question I had when, we were talking about parking and the potential, I know we talked about upgrading the parking station at the end of Fremlin and the potential to open what was the old parking station on Foreshore Road. And just to give you a bit of history, the reason why that was left to be overgrown was because it became a nighttime parking area. So anything that goes there, we'd have to have the right infrastructure to be conscious of that. And the other thing is we've also got that car park at the end of Chupier Street as well, which is sort of, that's got a lot more potential because it also sits on, there's potential there for a lot more parking spots too, where they've got the big mound of mulch.
Yeah.
And so to keep that in mind as part of that broader infrastructure, please.
Thank you, Councillor Curry. Councillor Douglas?
I would just make a suggestion that we add to the office recommendation, potentially inviting the Minister for Active Transport, Rob Stokes, down to review the site and giving him an invitation to offer to fund pump track and potentially sending an invitation to the opposition leader as well, seeing as though we are in the lead up to a state election. They might like to know that there is this desire for the community infrastructure.
Send the letter before March.
Yeah.
Are you happy with that?
Well, I think we can certainly write to them. It's not common practice to invite them to a potential site. It's,
We might have a pump point.
but it's not there.
Yeah, but they might try it.
So that, council can certainly write to them looking for funding opportunities. And there are some other potential grants too that I know council are exploring at the moment, which may be a possibility as well. So,
Yeah, I know that Minister Stokes is very supportive of these kinds of endeavours.
Right. Any further discussion? No. All those in favour? All those against? Declare that carried. Declare the motion closed. The meeting closed at 8:56 p.m.